Welcome to Wingin' It, the West Wing
Welcome.
Podcast. I'm here with Sallie.
Episode 15.
And we're going to talk about celestial navigation.
Yep. I really liked this episode, and I had sort of forgotten how much I liked it. Because it's not one that I would necessarily stop on and rewatch, but it was really good.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. And actually, I had been thinking of it as the wrong episode. I was thinking of it as the one where Josh goes stargazing with this female, and I didn't. So I was apprehensive, and I was like, "Oh, I don't like that one." But then when I realized I was wrong, this is a delightful episode.
Yeah,
indeed,
it was delightful.
So let's recap for those of you who haven't just watched it last night or last minute. What happens in this episode with the TikTok?
TikTok.
Are you guys ready? Just, bark twice if if you're ready for us to do this. So previously on the West Wing, in this episode, it's all about Roberto Mendoza, who is Bartlett's nomination for the Supreme Court. He was arrested, right? And we think he was wrongly accused of drunk driving, and he was actually pulled over for being Hispanic. So that is the big thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And so most of the story revolves around that and trying to get him out of jail. Along with that, CJ has some dental work done. She gets some work done on that grill. And a root canal, which we'll play some audio clips. Don't you worry, your pretty little heads. It'll happen. And so consequently, she can't do the press briefing about this. So Josh steps up to the plate, to the press. I can't speak at all today. Josh steps up to the press briefing room in her stead, and it just goes terribly, terribly wrong and creates more PR issues.
Gloriously wrong.
Gloriously wrong. Creates more PR issues than they had before. And I think that's mostly what happens in this episode. Are there any other major things that we need to...
I don't think so, really, which is kind of interesting. We can just talk about the storytelling of this episode is very different. Josh is giving a lecture. That's one thing. And in Josh's lecture, he's sort of going back and telling the events of the last 36 hours that led us to this point. Because at the same time Josh is giving his lecture, that's when Mendoza has been arrested and Sam and Toby are going to get him. So it's an interesting, it's a different kind of storytelling for the West Wing. Or at least this is the first different kind of storytelling.
Right. Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was good.
I really enjoyed it.
So in the previously on the West Wing, right, the thing at the very top of the episode, in this one, they used clips that show everyone's names and job titles, right?
Yes.
They were like, hi, I'm CJ, I do this, and Toby does that. They did that for everybody. And do you think they did that because people, like the general public, were confused about it? Or do you think that this episode was kind of designed to show everybody's roles? You know what I'm saying? It was very intentional.
Probably just they do it multiple times. There are a few episodes sprinkled throughout, at least the beginning, the first couple seasons, where that is the previously on. And I think it's just for people who maybe haven't been caught up, or people, because at this point it's still very new.
This is the first time we've seen it like that, though.
Yes, this is the first time we've seen it. But they do it more times. I think it's just for, I don't know, just to recap, I guess. Because this episode doesn't really need that much other, backstory. It kind of explains itself. So it's just a good time to, for anybody who's just watching this, one-off episode to be like, oh, this is what's going on here. Oh, I've heard about this West Wing show. Maybe I should tune in.
Yeah, I just kind of wondered if that was... why that was different. It didn't really have anything to do with plot. It had all to do with character and the characters' functions on the show. But let's just jump right in and talk about our favorite parts of this episode.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the favorite parts for me were anytime CJ talked with her root canal mouth.
God. What the hell happened? I had root canal. What happened to your cheeks? I had root canal.
Why are you talking like that?
I had root canal.
Yeah, I heard you the first time. I was just amusing myself.
I can suggest some other things you can do with yourself.
Are you in pain?
I had root canal.
You're gonna need to stop saying that because you just look and sound so ridiculous.
I just thought it was, I know we've talked about the comedy aspect of this character, but yeah, and it is just so brilliant in this episode. I mean, she's just fantastic. Because a lot of times the guys get, well, no, it's pretty even on the quips, but you get a lot of Josh quips, you get a lot of Josh funny moments, but CJ really stole the episode for me in this one with the humor.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a funny idea. I love that. And I thought it was funny that Sam was really adamant that she have it done. You know, like he's like, if you take care of your teeth, they'll take care of you. It's kind of like the first glimpse that we'll get of Rob Lowe's character from Parks and Rec, Chris Traeger.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that exactly, that it was they were very similar characters right there.
It's so funny. Although I feel like real Rob Lowe would probably say the same thing. Not sure, but I feel like
so. I mean, he's in pretty great condition, so I think there's probably a bit of that to him.
I think he has a fountain of youth in his yard. I don't know.
I think he probably has to.
There's no other explanation for it.
Yep. I agree.
I just remember when I realized that this was the episode, when she mentions the dentist appointment, I was like, yes, this is the root canal one. So great. However, I saw on the opening credits that Dee Dee Myers is the one who wrote this story, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And
she's
also
the advisor to the show.
Yeah.
She was actually a press secretary, yes?
Yes, and she is the one that that CJ and Danny's relationship is sort of based off of. That she, I think, ended up marrying, we mentioned this before,
right.
I think, ended up marrying a New York Times reporter, if I remember correctly. It might not have been New York Times, but married a reporter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is interesting. And I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but the music is done by W.G. Snuffy.
Snuffleupagus. Yeah.
Yeah.
I call him Snuffleupagus in my head.
That's always been pretty interesting.
True.
Snuffy. For such an intense serious show, it's worth mentioning once in our whole podcast.
He should
the music is done by Snuffy.
I know. Snuffy should have a more serious name if he's going to be making music for
Snuffy
this
should come on our show. WG was that it? WG Snuffy Walden.
I wonder what else he's done. It could be a she.
We can find out.
Who am I to be sexist? I could be a she. Snuff.
Let's find out. It's a he, and I'm just gonna.
You're gonna Google
figure this out. Yeah.
You Googleizing.
Let's bring him on the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I just always think that's worth mentioning because it's just like, well, it's worth mentioning once at least.
For sure.
He was a composer for The Wonder Years, Friday Night Lights, The Drew Carey Show.
Oh. Friday Night Lights.
Nashville Now.
So he's
lots of
busy.
stuff, really. Lots of stuff. Very busy guy. Yeah.
So maybe he may not have time for a podcast.
Yeah, true. That's
What if
that's
what if we booked Big Bird on it too? we need to find someone who goes by Big Bird as a nickname, and then book Snuffy and just have the world implode.
But speaking of the music, though, I don't think we've talked about this. It's hard for me to remember like what you and I have talked about just in life in general, and what we've talked about on the podcast. But sometimes the music we end. I think I maybe have mentioned this, but we end The West Wing on like a super serious note, and then the end credit music is very like, I can't even remember how it goes. Yeah, it's very like upbeat and stringy and high pitched, and you're just like, like a whole like plane could have just crashed, or
like
the president had to resign or something like that.
Yeah,
and I just made both those things up, but
yeah,
but and then it's just like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo or whatever, and you're like, all right, well,
we'll play it.
Just ruined my mood. Yeah,
we'll
okay,
drop
we'll
it
play
in
it right now.
Yeah. Oh, this reminds me, we didn't sing to the opening. That's fine. We don't need to sing to the opening. But You're right. That's a good thing to point out. It's strange. It's like, it's not at all, it's more upbeat than even the opening. The opening is very legato, and this one is very, like, rhythmic
Yeah.
and marching.
It's strange that they never thought, maybe we should change that and, like, have it be...
But see, I like it.
Something different, yeah.
It
You
doesn't-
like it? Is that what you said?
Yeah. It doesn't ruin my mood. It makes me, like, curious as to what's going to happen next. And especially with Netflix and how it's like, ooh, this is the transition time. It's going to start playing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which I know was not originally what happened because it was TV. But I like it. It's
Right.
anticipation music.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I like it sometimes. I don't dislike it. It's just odd when it's a very somber moment and then it's like, here come the strings. So
True. I would consider making it my ringtone. I'm just saying. I would like to hear...
You should do that.
This is something I would like to hear from anyone who's listening. I want to know how many people have any sort of West Wing tones on their phone. My friend, like I said, my friend Sarah used to have the theme song as her ringtone. And I would like to hear from somebody who maybe has that as well. Just to put a name with a face and know that she's not the only one in the world who's done that.
yeah, I bet a lot of people probably do.
Yeah, tweet at us, email us, let us know if you do that.
Yeah.
And then we'll call you
So-
just so you can hear it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So a question about this episode, maybe not a question, but a general wondering. The title of the episode is Celestial Navigation. And this is because, for those who didn't just watch it, this is because when Sam and Toby are driving to go find Mendoza and find the courthouse and the police station, Sam starts using the stars to guide them to their destination.
Yes.
Which A is interesting because obviously that wouldn't be a problem now because we have GPS in our phone and anywhere we need it. But I didn't really think that it was like worthy of the title of the episode. So I'm concerned that I missed some sort of greater metaphor, and I was hoping you or like our listeners, maybe we missed something and they could fill me in on like how this became the title, because it was sort of a small moment.
It is a small moment. Is there anything we can extract from it to apply to the other issues in
Right, that's what I was trying to figure out.
I did not connect the two. I was on the same.
I'm having a hard time. It feels like, even if I could, it would feel like a reach. So just interesting that, because the Mendoza topic is a pretty heavy topic. I mean, he's been pulled over because he's Hispanics, essentially. Yeah. So if that's a pretty heavy topic, and it seems like there would be something in the title relating to that, so it just makes me feel like I've missed something there.
I don't think so, but again, you guys let us know what you think. I kind of wonder, as Sorkin was writing this, like I said, he probably just thinks of different scenarios he'd like to see the characters in, and then he writes it. Obviously, that's he does.
Right.
But I think the whole Toby lost in a car in the dark with Sam is hilarious in and of itself. So I kind of wonder if that was like the initial like thought, and maybe he just like had that as a working title, like Celestial Navigation, and Sam's gonna be all like, nerdy about navigating, and Toby's gonna be really frustrated, which is always funny, I think.
Right. Yes.
And then maybe they're like, okay, where would they be driving together? And then they put together this scenario. That's my guess. It could be 1,000% wrong, but that is what I'm guessing.
I think that's probably, I think it's probably true. Like, let's just put them in different scenarios. I think that makes sense, especially with Toby. Toby's probably the character that I think would be the most fun to be like, let's put Toby here, let's put Toby there.
Yeah.
So I think Toby lost in the car is a fun idea.
Especially with Sam, who's so positive and nerdy.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that makes for a fun. Their characters go together very well because of how differently they seem to view things.
It's true. And I noticed in this episode, and again, we both love Toby, probably me more than you, but he's particularly snarky from the jump in this episode. From the get-go. He is not warm at all.
When Josh messes up the press briefing, and Josh is saying something like, I can't remember if he's asking for Toby, if he's like, I think he just says, like, did Toby hear it? And then we hear Toby say something. Toby said something like, did you fall on your head? Yeah, he said, have you fallen on your head? Or was
Yeah.
maybe that wasn't that line.
Or have you
but
hit something very hard, or have you fallen on your head, or yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so that's really funny. And him with Sam being sassy, that was funny. He later tells Sam in the episode, there's something really kind of freakish about you, you know that?
Yeah.
So he has a good sassy episode.
I mean, let's also talk about Bradley Whitford in this episode, because there's so much, right? I can just imagine when he gets the script that he was super stoked, because he has several very long monologues.
Mm-hmm. He does.
More so than normal. And I love the whole thing with him telling it at the college, and he's so casual. He's so nonchalant. You can tell he's
very
nonchalant.
Loving it. That's what I was going to say. He's very nonchalant, but you can also tell he's so in his element, and he's so you can tell that he's sort of turning it on for all the students. And it's the same way that Bartlett, when he's giving speeches, sort of flips into his presidential voice. I felt the same way about Josh slipping into, it was not a presidential voice, but it was just this
homecoming king voice.
Yeah, this different kind of persona to talk to these kids. And at one point when he goes outside to take a call, one of the co-eds tells him, "You're great." And he's like, "Thanks." Yeah, he checks her out. And it's such a job. It just, having him, because really one of my first thoughts was, Josh just messed up this press briefing. In the very first episode of the whole series, Josh has misspoken at some public event. So, maybe we shouldn't send Josh to speak on behalf of the White House or in representing the White House in any way. And I was like, it's odd that they would have him doing this and not, a communications director who could give a voice to how it is to work at the White House, but also be aware of what they're saying. But then, as we go through the episode and Bradley Whitford is delivering all these lines and giving all these monologues, it's this is why it was written that way, because Josh is just so charming that it made more sense to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, technically everybody else was busy, Sam
that's
and
true.
Toby were away, which I even feel like it follows the through line that Toby is responsible for getting Mendoza confirmed, right? So he's been nominated officially, but to getting him to that point, obviously they mentioned different ways that he's spoken out in an unprofessional way throughout the process. And he's supposed to be coming back from Nova Scotia, and he's stopping. It's taking him 3 days to get to Washington because he wants to go antiquing in Connecticut. I mean, but also just speaking out about issues. And apparently you're not supposed to speak until you're confirmed, which I guess that makes sense because they don't want to rock the boat. But I forgot that Toby was the one responsible for that. So
yeah, they don't. I think that they don't want to rock the boat is sort of an understatement. I hadn't really known that much about the confirmation process until, and this isn't our only confirmation process throughout the series. But just seeing how nitpicky it can be and how far back they go and looking for stuff and the tiniest things they're looking for. Saying that they don't, it's a big deal that he is talking about issues because you're really not supposed to do anything. I mean, it's a very tough process and I don't know. It's interesting that he does that, and I can imagine that the whole White House is just on edge all the time. Please stop saying things. To the public.
Speaking of just stop saying things to the public, let's talk about the press briefing with Josh.
Okay, but right before the press briefing is my favorite because Danny is
well, we're going to just play this clip. I've already recorded it because I knew I just loved it so much. So listen in.
To the briefing?
You're not going to do this.
I talk to reporters all the time.
You really don't want to do this.
Let me tell you something, mi compadre. You guys have been coddled. I'm not your girlfriend. I'm not your camp counselor. And I'm not your 6th grade teacher you had a crush on. I'm a graduate of Harvard and Yale. And I believe that my powers of debate can rise to meet the Socratic wonder that is the White House press corps.
Okie dokie.
Oh, man. It just goes horribly downhill from there. Just...
yeah.
In the worst way.
It does. It in the worst but the best way, because it is kind of fun to like watch Josh just because he so thinks he has it. He's like, I went to all these colleges and I did this and this and this. Like, I think I can handle a room full of reporters. And then he doesn't at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be so tough, though. That job, press secretary, is so... Oh, man, that's
Right.
got to be a tough job. And it was strange. Well, things that I've learned from the West Wing about PR, and this is a life lesson to us all, for anyone who ever feels like they might be interviewed for something. Things that I've learned from the West Wing, you don't swing at bad pitches. Right? So if you don't like the question, you have to reject the premise of it. You can't just answer it because then you'll get trapped and you'll get going down a road. You have to reject the whole premise and don't swing at the bad pitches, which is exactly what he did.
Right. Because there really isn't any good way for him to answer Danny's question. I mean, because Danny asks, is there a plan for this inflation? So either A, there's not a plan, or B, there is a plan and they haven't talked about it, or something like you're exactly right. You'd have to reject
plan
the whole
to fight
premise.
inflation.
CJ would have just turned it all the way around and had a whole different thing, and Josh just walks right into it.
Yeah. So then he says that he was being sarcastic, which again is not good. He also called some of their questions stupid. Again, not good. And then
not
he says
good. That was not good.
Of course there's a plan to fight inflation. There's 46, Harvard grads working here and whatever. And then the other reporters jump on it and say, well, if there's a secret plan, like, why aren't you guys telling us? And then it's funny because later in the episode when Josh actually has to stand in front of Bartlett and say, like, oops, here are all the things that we screwed up while you were away. Then Bartlett says, wait, let me get this straight. Not only do I have a secret plan to fight inflation, but now you don't support it? It's so great.
It's really funny.
Gosh. But that's my question, though, is like, they realized there was no press secretary in the room. Like, what is the protocol here? Like,
yeah.
That's a team failure. That's not just Josh. Like, yeah, he's failed spectacularly, but like, why didn't Sam step in sooner? Or like, who's CJ's backup? What was what's her name doing?
Yeah, that's what seems strange, is that there isn't, like, I'm kind of curious about that now. In the real world, you would think that there's got to be a plan for if something happens and the press secretary is sick or the press secretary is doing something, that somebody else would be able to give the briefing, and it wouldn't be a last minute, like, here you go, it's your turn kind of situation. Because you do have to be so very skilled to maneuver the reporters.
Yeah.
So, you can't just throw anybody up there, as Josh learns.
Oh gosh, so great.
Speaking of great, we have a good, I think it's in this episode. Oh, yeah. Charlie and the President moment.
Oh gosh, also recorded this.
Did you really? Perfect. Yes. Charlie has to wake the President up.
What?
Good morning, Mr. President. It's Charlie.
I mean, what could you possibly want right now?
Sir, it's 6:30 a.m. and...
In the morning?
Yes, sir. And I wanted to remind you that...
I mean, what in the name of everything holy could you want right now?
I wanted to remind you that you have a 7 a.m. meeting at the Oval Office with senior staff, followed by your security and intelligence briefings, and a meeting with the chairman of the Fed. Would you like me to have the stewards bring you some coffee in the Washington Post?
Who the hell is this?
Sir.
And what could you possibly want?
Sir, I need you to dig in now. It wasn't a nightmare. You really are the president.
All right.
I'll have a steward bring the coffee to your room.
I'll get up now.
So that is really great. It's just more of, it's kind of fun how immediately we get a sense of, like, the President and Charlie's bonding. I mean, we're only 15 episodes in, but they're, like, already, like, family. I mean, they're already very comfortable. And they were, like, in the 4th or 5th episode, right after we met Charlie. And I really like that. We just sort of, it almost feels like we jump in mid-relationship. It just makes their back and forth a lot more fun. But it's just a very fun time. My favorite line in that is, it wasn't a nightmare, you really are the president.
Yes. So good.
Because you just wonder if sometimes he really would wake up and be like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah. You gotta think there's just like one day, perhaps after like a
Yeah.
string of really long bad press days, bad results in the world days, that he's just like, I'm just gonna, can I just call in sick for like a day? No.
Yeah.
Nope. Can't do
If it were me, I would feel that way probably every other day. But that's why I'm not the president.
Sallie for president 2020.
No. Listen, Sallie for president, my first line of business would be working nap time into the day.
I would vote for that.
Right? I think pretty much everybody would.
I'll be your chief
let's
of
have
staff.
lunch, and then we all go home around 2, and then we all come back around 3:30. And, like, it's totally fine.
We'll call it the Sallie siesta. And that will be our
Yes.
campaign platform. I will be your deputy chief of staff. I will be your
Sallie
press
for
secretary.
America.
Sallie for
Great.
America.
That's the only point I have to run on, but I think it's pretty strong.
But I feel like, yeah, people could get behind that. Who doesn't want that?
Nobody. I mean, everybody does.
Everybody wants that. Sorry.
Nobody doesn't want it.
I set it up with a double negative. Whoops.
I reject that premise.
Oh, you're so good. You're
I already learned things.
presidential material. Now we just got to work on the presidential voice.
I have only the West Wing to thank.
Oh, that would be a great part of your speech. Then you could really talk to all the characters, all of the actors. I mean, if you became president, that's one way of going about it. A little excessive, perhaps.
Well, yeah. Well, whatever.
But can we wait?
So I guess we can talk about that.
Before we move on, I just want to talk about wake-up calls for a minute because I love that scene, but I feel like I really love that convenience at hotels, and I didn't really use it a lot when I was younger because I was younger and didn't travel independently. But now that I'm older, I really like it. I think I've never slept better than when I've had a wake-up call because I just know that even if my phone dies or whatever, those doggone phones in the rooms are so loud, and you're gonna wake up.
That's true.
Also,
I don't have a ton of experience with it, but I mean, I guess because I rely so heavily on my phone. But I also wonder, in turning that back around to the West Wing, I wonder in real life if the body man is the person who has to wake him up, or I don't know. I just wonder about that. Maybe it depends president to president. Maybe some presidents like to set their own alarms. I don't know.
I know. It's not like Bartlett's setting his cell phone, or his alarm. Like, somebody's going to tell him. You've got to think that they try to free up every neuron of the president's brain as possible. Like, if he doesn't have to figure out what time to get up and just someone else figures it out for him. Right. Or
what time to do anything. I imagine that's how it is for like what time it is, when you need to eat, when you need to go places. Like, he doesn't worry about his schedule. He doesn't worry about anything. That's why it's constantly what's next. Is he's literally just going where he's supposed to go. And that'd be the only way you could really keep your, I don't know, keep your brain functioning, I guess.
Yeah.
But my other question about this scene is whether surely there's more than one body man, or that there would be some sort of shift, because Charlie hasn't slept at all. And I wonder about the accuracy of that. Obviously, you would have nights where you don't sleep a lot, but I wonder how much the body man really is working. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I need to read that book that you recommended from
very
Obama's person. I've thought about it again. I'd like to get in on that. So
so that's kind of interesting. I just am curious about that, about how accurate that scene is where Charlie's like, I haven't even been to sleep. He doesn't say that, but
Mm-hmm. Do we want to talk about Mendoza or anything else about
that's
that?
what I was about to say, is that I guess we should talk about the actual point of the episode.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? What do you think about Mendoza? So for those who don't remember, Mendoza is sort of, he could have pulled strings to get himself out, or not even pulled strings. He could have said who he was. I don't really know, but he wanted to make a point that it was wrong.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're not talking politics here, but I just feel like it's still so very relevant to today. So in terms of talking about the West Wing and its relevancy, I thought that was a good storyline to visit. And again, it just puts another human story to it. He talks about the fact that his son saw him get in a cop car and taken away to jail. And, you know, he's talking to Toby like, hey, you know, this is what my son's going to remember. And Toby, I think in a good way, and it makes sense. He says, well, but he's also seen you wearing your robe and being a judge. And he's like, yeah, but he doesn't understand that. He understands cops and all this stuff. And I loved that when they actually do get him out of jail, Toby stipulates that the police have to come and follow him to the hotel where his wife and his child are staying and apologize to them, including to the son. And that was an example for me of how much Toby takes everything personally, and is for as much as stubborn as he gets, as passionate as he gets, in a very good way. This is an example of that. He really wants to try to right this wrong personally for Mendoza, which I liked.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think you're exactly right about, and we're probably going to keep talking about this over and over and over again, but this is another example of doing such a good job of putting a face to something, because it would be so easy to just be preachy about certain politics or to say this is right, this is wrong, blah, blah, blah. But instead, Sorkin sort of builds these sort of complex situations. Like sometimes, you know, without putting any opinions in it, but throughout the series, you're like, well, maybe I feel this way, or maybe I feel that way, or maybe I don't really like this situation. But he sets it up to make you think about those things, you know, to make you think, should he be doing this, or should he be doing that, or it makes you debate it, and it brings the issues to light in a different kind of way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that makes The West Wing so great. That it's just, I mean, it's a show about politics, and it has its preachy moments, and it has its moments where it's very like, this is how I feel about things, but it also does a great job of showing the complexity that not all of these issues are black and white. And I think this is a good example of that.
I agree. Yep. It's so good. What else in those scenes? I mean, I think Sam throughout. Sam is the comedic relief. I mean, CJ's root canal, I mean, that's just
like when the police officers, one of the cops asks him if he knows the missile codes, and Sam's like, yeah. But Sam doesn't know the missile codes.
Yeah, he's clearly lying. And just the fact that he's talking about different, like, highway routes throughout the entire episode.
Right.
It's just funny.
Yeah, it's very funny. He's definitely some comedic relief, but CJ just kills it. I think it's Toby that says, maybe Toby or Josh, but it sounds like a Toby line. I just have it written down where he says, CJ, so help me God if you use the words president or beefed one more time. It's just like, what is she supposed to do? And then Bartlett says, like, if there's blood, like, gushing out of your head, you're still going to do the briefing. And it's like, all right, that's like a nice sentiment that, like, you're in charge, but that's not actually practical because, like, you really couldn't have given the press briefing in that condition. So, I don't know.
I mean, at least she feels secure in her job. I feel like that's, really. You know, it's kind of a bloody way of saying it, but, you know, at least she feels good about that.
Yeah, I guess so. And just one more interesting note is that we end the episode, it sort of fades to the credits with the lecturer guy saying, all right, should we take some questions? And you're just thinking, no, probably not. I think that Josh should probably not take any questions. That was a fun little note to end on, because clearly Josh taking questions has gotten us in trouble. Like, that's the whole point of the episode. So it's cool that they end on that line. You're like, gosh. Oh no, don't take any questions, Josh.
just keep the cameras rolling for that part.
Yeah.
Oh man, there were so many good players in this episode. I think this is a tough one to pick. It's a tough one to pick an MVP for.
Yeah. Man, that's very true. I hadn't even thought about it. It's funny that I don't ever think about the MVP until you're like, who's the MVP? And I'm like, oh, man.
Like, who won this episode for you? I mean, there's so many good parts. This was really an ensemble effort, I feel.
I think it has to be CJ for me. Maybe not even, I don't know. Who is it for you?
Gosh, I don't know, because I love CJ, but I feel like I know Josh messed things up, but I mean it's a very Josh centric episode. But I really, you know what? I'm gonna buck tradition, and I'm not going to pick one because I really feel like it was an ensemble cast for this one.
I think
Sam was funny. Toby got Mendoza out of jail. Charlie was funny. CJ was funny. It was like
everybody
but
was funny.
Leo.
Yeah. I think that I'm going to have to pick CJ. Not like CJ, but just Allison Janney does such a great job comedically. And I think, so I'm going to give the MVP to Allison Janney.
Hooray!
Not CJ, but Allison Janney.
Okay, that's a good distinction to make.
Yeah. Because
So
it was
there you go.
she just did so well. So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
Well,
so next
Celestial
up is
Navigation.
20 Hours in LA coming next.
Yes, indeed. Second star to the right and keep on till morning. We'll see you in the next episode, which starts in 3, 2, 1. Bye.